So welcome to this evening's Distinguished Speaker Seminar. Looks like we've got a great turnout, and I can guarantee we've got a very, very interesting and energetic guest for us tonight. So I'd like to welcome Carter Murray, who is the worldwide CEO for FCB. Carter is based in New York, but you'll hear a British accent, and has sort of had a global career. I actually met Carter about 6-7 years ago, when we both happened to be living in France, and at that point he was the CMO at Publicis, based in Paris. Since then he took on a role as the North American CEO at Y&R in New York, and then a little over 2 years ago moved over to the worldwide CEO at FCB. So Carter's a really energetic, fascinating person who really knows the advertising and media businesses extremely well, and has some really exciting and interesting thoughts that he's going to share with us in terms of what really the future of all of this is, with all the change that we all know is taking place. So in addition to being very interesting and energetic, he's also exceedingly busy. So if any of you follow him on Instagram, as I do, you would think that maybe he's able to teleport himself around the world, because it's almost like every day there's a new location that Carter is at, and taking selfies with various colleagues and people. So we're very fortunate that he's been able to take time out of this really busy travel schedule and work schedule, and running a large global organization, to spend some time with us here at Oxford this evening. So on that note, I'd like to welcome Carter. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. No pressure then. My stepfather came into my life when I was 12 years old. And along with him came my grandfather. This is him, Pierre Charmat. He was a very interesting man, had a very profound influence on my life. He comes from a very old French family with quite a strong lineage, and him and his father gave most of it up and are inventors. Now, I don't know how many of you know how, I assume most of you drink wine or champagne. And for centuries and centuries, champagne was made the same way, turning the bottle a centimeter every day. And he believed there was a better way of doing it. And for centuries, no one did anything about it. But he's very French and quite stubborn, and I loved him for it. And he invented the industrial process for making champagne. He worked out that it wasn't about turning the bottles more frequently. He said, I'm going to make the champagne in barrels, and I'm going to make them better than when you do them in the bottles. Of course, there was a bit of a revolution in France when they did this. But what was so interesting about growing up with him is that he always questioned everything. He always believed there was a better way to do everything. You know, when he passed away in my late 20s, he had 7 computers around his bed. He was 99 years old, and he was lecturing me that I didn't deserve to have a computer because I didn't know MS-DOS. And I'm telling you that story because I've been asked to talk about change and how we think about marketing and change in marketing. And I thought it'd be interesting for you to know why I ended up in marketing. And I ended up in marketing because I realized I would never be as talented as he was. But I found out when I was interning one summer at an ad agency that there were people as talented as he was, called creatives. And I could actually tie myself closely to them. I would have a really interesting and fun career. And so that's how I ended up in advertising, standing in front of you today. I think my mum would be quite proud, actually. I told her I was coming. So the topic I was asked to talk about is change. This is something, obviously, in the marketing world is affecting, change is affecting us at such a high speed, and I thought it was important to give some context to it. So what I would like to take away from today, if possible, is the thought of my point of view on how to deal with change is to focus on better rather than change. I grew up, I'm dating myself a bit with a lot of people in the room, but I'm a product of the 80s and the 90s. I actually went to Duke University where I studied modernism and postmodernism, and at that time there was a philosophy that postmodernism was dead, that one had to believe in enlightenment and betterment, in that the world was becoming a better place. Walls were coming down. I'm sure many of you remember where you were when the Berlin Wall came down. Regimes, horrible regimes, were being destroyed. And then the internet came about, Netscape. And suddenly there was this ideal belief that we could bring people closer together, that mankind could get to know each other better and come closer together. So it was an amazing time of optimism and a feeling of progress. And I think that's interesting when I'm now presenting and talking to you about 2016 and change, that we seem to have gone backwards. Walls are going back up. And not just in parts of the Middle East. We have this crazy man running for president who thinks that wall is not good enough. In fact, he wants to build a big, beautiful wall. The irony, of course, that Donald Trump doesn't mention is 80% of Mexican illegal immigrants come in by air. But we'll leave that one for Donald to solve. But we, at a time when we should be closer together, we've never been further apart. You can look at the politics happening in the UK. You know, the Labour Party moved to the centre, the Conservatives started to move to the centre, and now you start to see the political parties moving further apart. The reason I'm talking about this is you then go, what is the role of marketing? How does marketing play a role in this day and age? Well, I believe the role of mass marketing, and most of the clients we have are multinational clients or clients that want to be number 1 or 2 in the market, is to find the things that unify us, not that divide us. And what's inspiring for me about that is that's what we've always done as marketers when we're at our best. The way we do it now is changing and is different. But the fundamentals are still the same when you do it right. And you just need to look at a brand like Coke to see that. And I'm going to show you an example. The other thing that I'm a big fan of is trying to understand the past and the present and not throw it all away and just look at the future. And I don't know if we talk about it here in the marketing seminar, but Howard Gossage was a bit of a maverick from the 50s and the 60s in advertising. Some of the great marketers of the 70s, 80s, 90s, and today take inspiration from him. But, you know, he even said back then about advertising, changing the world is the only fit work for a grown man. I would add woman now as well, but that was from a different period. But I do think changing the world is what we should try to achieve as marketers. And I think the events of social media has meant that our brands are now responsible. And we have to make sure they are responsible, but more importantly, accountable. So I just wanted to share an example of how that's changed. So I'm going to play probably the most famous ad of all time, made even more famous by Mad Men. And I'm showing it to you because this ad occurred right after the Vietnam War, at a time when people were looking for optimism. They were looking for something to stand up for, and they were looking for just something positive to bring into their day-to-day life.
I'd like to buy the world a home and furnish it with love. Grow apple trees and honey bees and snow white turtle doves. I'd like to teach the world to sing with me. Perfect harmony, perfect harmony. I'd like to buy the world a home and keep it company. That's the real thing. I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony and I'd like to buy the world a coat and keep it company. It's the real thing. What the world wants today is the real thing. What the world wants today is the real thing.
So this was at a time of discord 20, 30 years ago when people were being pulled apart and Coke wanted to talk about optimism. And they took people from different ethnicities, different parts of the world, put them on a hill and had them sing a song. Had a profound impact on the time, actually. It elevated what great advertising was. In this day and age, though, television can't do it on its own. So Coke is one of our clients in South Africa. And I'm going to show you an example of what they do now where they want people to experience that optimism and experience that brand using technologies that didn't exist before. And Coke now do this with countless examples around the world on a micro level instead of trying to be marketers where they beam everything through a television.
20 years ago, South Africa held its first democratic election. Nelson Mandela was elected into office. And Bishop Desmond Tutu coined the phrase the Rainbow Nation. A rainbow represented the diversity that made South Africa great. We chose one of the largest skyscrapers in downtown Johannesburg to share our message. To remind South Africans what the rainbow symbol stood for. It took a bunch of fancy calculations, a lot of testing, and a little bit of magic. So, in the end, we didn't just show the symbol, we created it. A giant rainbow that appeared above our billboard. People stopped to witness the addition to the skyline. This rainbow is created by capturing the sun at a specific angle through the mist of non-drinkable recycled water.
In South Africa we say I am who I am because of other people. We call that Ubuntu.
Giving the Rainbow Nation the opportunity to mark 20 years of democracy.
There are so many small kindnesses between South Africans.
I think this is one of the friendliest countries in the world, and I think that makes me smile every day.
Creating a little moment of happiness.
So when you think about modern marketing and embracing change, when the creative came up with that idea, one of those crazy people, going back to the beginning of the presentation, people said it was impossible. And we used modern technology to bring it to life. And that's an idea that traveled across television, the internet, outdoor eventually, between paid owned and earned media, and is a modern way of expressing that optimism that is Coca-Cola. So I thought that might be interesting. We're also talking about change. So I imagine you sit in quite a few lectures. I hope you do. And I think one of the things when I go to conferences and marketing is I think we also have to be careful about how we listen to people that talk about change. And I like to often say, beware of false prophets. I just like this visual. I thought it was fun. But you can go to some of these public presentations and conferences where people make massive proclamations and they're lacking substance. And I think it's about taking everything that you hear and coming up with your own point of view. And the other thing that I think is important when we talk about technology and change and what modern marketing is and where it's going, there are very different perspectives on the same technology, on the medium. And again, I like silly visuals, can you tell? But I think, we don't know what's coming ahead, and people have very different interpretations. So I'm going to try and give as factual an interpretation as possible when I talk to you. When I was doing my A-level politics paper in the early 90s, the A-level question I had to answer was, can Labour ever win again? That was a serious question in the early 1990s. Can Labour ever win again? And everyone doing A-level politics in the United Kingdom had to answer it. And 3 years later, he got elected and stayed in power for 10 years. Yet everyone was convinced Labour were unelectable. I think you might be saying that about Labour now, actually. So I think you need to be careful. I certainly didn't believe they could win again, and then they did, and actually, I'm one of the few people that thinks he was pretty good. Second Life. Who here knows what Second Life is? Okay, so poor Andrew, probably about 7 years ago, I bet every conference you went to, it was all about Second Life. There were clients, and I'm not joking, there were clients that spend hundreds of millions of dollars a year that were saying, we need to take 20, 30, I think one of them said 50% of our marketing budget and put it in Second Life. Second Life is a virtual online world. And when it first came out, people were saying, our lives as we know it are dead, we're all going to live virtually. And people believed it. Today, that is a site for pornography and a few slightly twisted people. Clients spent millions and millions of dollars. General Motors spent tens of millions of dollars building a virtual showroom. So I'm telling you that because when you stand at these conferences, you've got to, and this is what I think is actually good about coming to a university like this, is you get to analyze what is worthwhile and what is not with some other smart people. You know, this is a picture of, I like this one. This is a picture from Davos right 1 month before the economic crisis in 2008. Was it 7 or 8? It was 8, right? I'm getting older. They all blend together. This was the smartest brains in the world, the leading industrialists and businessmen in the world, all got together, and no one predicted the financial crash. Actually, apparently Bernie Sanders was in a kooky room in the back and predicted it, but no one was listening to him. So my HR partner, this lady called Cindy Augustine, who was the head of HR at the New York Times, an amazing lady, she says it how it is, so I wanted to quote her. And she said, so many trends are connecting at the same time that when the inflection point hits, it can be pretty scary. And we just need to look at Kodak, and I'm sure you study these. Who would have thought that Shutterfly would be taking all the printing away from Kodak? Shutterfly exists here, right? Or was that a US phenomenon? So Shutterfly is an app, and it literally connects to your iPhone pictures. You click what you want. It's a 2-button process. And 2 days later, you get all your printouts delivered to your door. They've put Kodak out of business, companies like this. Who would have guessed that taxi cabs would become irrelevant to Uber, where they're putting them under so much threat that they're rioting on the streets? So we do know that these technologies are changing the world. Again, we have to be careful on how we post-rationalize how easy it is to do it, because it's unbelievably hard. But with that in mind, I did want to share with you the reality that we as marketers face. The reality is that 3% of digital 10, 15 years ago, 3% of media budgets and spends of clients were in digital. Today it's 40. And in 15 years it's going to be 80% in digital, most of it on the telephone. And this is what's really scary for marketers. The shift is generational. So you probably feel a lot more advanced from your parents, but you are now in the dark ages compared to the next generation. And when you see this distribution, I'm sure you share it in classes, one of the key metrics of a brand is what is your average age of your user. And you can tell that your business is in serious trouble when your average age of your user gets older every year. It means that you don't have anyone coming in. So when you see the younger generation not having serious adoption of your brand, and you're not engaging them in the world in which they live, it's a huge problem. And so I think how we engage them has to change, and I want to show you some examples of that. For me, the core thing that keeps advertising agencies alive and marketing alive is creativity. And technology has changed how we bring ideas to life, how we engage people, how we have people give brand experiences. But creativity, going back to my story about the champagne and reinventing champagne, technology serves creativity to make a difference in people's lives. If you really want to understand people and connect with them, you need to use your creativity, and then the technology has to help you connect. So, on the subject of what creativity is, again, for me, it's not about being different, it's about being better when you think about marketing today and in the future. Better always has value, different doesn't. The irony of Apple is the line is think different. But actually, Steve Jobs wasn't about different, he was about better. He didn't invent the mobile phone, he just made it leaps and bounds better. He didn't invent the iPad, he made it better. So when you think about change and technology and how you can make a difference, it's a lot easier, and it's a lot easier to digest when you think, I just need to make something better, I don't have to make it different. Creativity comes out of necessity as well, and I think one of the things you'll see more and more is the importance of everything you do in marketing, whether it's in traditional advertising, social media, whatever you do, there has to be necessity. I love this visual. There were 2 million patents filed last year. 2 million patents. Most of them stayed on the shelf, and those that stayed on the shelf were the ones that weren't useful. The other thing about creativity and better is that these changes in technology and the lives that we're leading open up our world to think in brave and exciting new ways. We should embrace it. It's exciting. It's not scary. Art, for many centuries, tried to impersonate the real world or recreate the real world. And when photography was invented, it opened up a whole new genre of creativity and art. And I think in advertising, we're in a similar place. Actually, again, it's what we've always done. So Foot Cone and Belding, the agency that I now work for and run, this was back in the 50s. The orange growers of California came to the agency and said, we need to sell more oranges. Help us sell more oranges. And we didn't come out with a TV ad, we came up with an idea. And the idea is you should, sell juice. You'll sell a lot more of them. And so they invented sun-kissed orange juice. So when you think about better and you think about creativity, I think it's applying it against a problem and doing it in an exciting way. We can confuse marketing and make it very complex, but there is a simplicity to marketing. And it's that point where you're able to have true concision and get down to a simple idea. John Hegarty did it best in a pitch once when he said, I had this one word, this one idea, and it's going to sit between your eyes, and then you're going to think about it, and then tomorrow it'll grow, and then we'll show you a TV ad, and it'll grow further, and then you'll have an experience with the brand, and it'll grow further. But the art is to work out what your brand stands for in a very simple way, and then prove it every single day in everything that you do, in every experience that your customers have. And when you do this right, it's magic. And I don't think that's changed. I think you still need to work out where you are in culture, what difference your product brings to everyone else, who you're trying to connect to and how, and connect to a simple idea. And once you have it, then you can have a whole hell of a lot of fun blowing it out and really making everybody around the world feel that you're talking to them. So I have a few examples that I want to show you. I think the way we do it has changed. And you have to put people at the heart of everything you do. That's one of our learnings from years of pain, because whenever you don't put the customer at the center, you normally get kicked in the teeth. It's a very humbling experience as a marketer. You have to resonate with people and their insights of what makes them tick. But what we do in marketing now is much more about what we do. We have to put them in the center and ask them, what are we doing for them? And what are we enabling in the world for them to do? And I want to show you some examples of a modern way of doing that. So I think so one of our clients is Nivea. You all know Nivea, right? It's quite big in England, I hope. It's one of our biggest clients. We're doing a really bad job if you don't know what Nivea is. So Nivea do sun cream. And in Brazil, we have won probably more awards out of our Brazil agency than almost any other agency in the world. Definitely one of the most awarded agencies in the industry. And because there was a belief that when you talk about care, that concision, care and maternal care, it's not just about helping protect the child, it's also about helping the mother, putting the mother at the center of everything you do. And what I love about this example is it shows how you do it in a way where the technology serves the end customer and serves the brand, not the customer or the brand serving the technology. So the idea there, when you think of protection, in a traditional advertising, you'd have a print ad going, it's all about protection for you as a mother for your child. There, you demonstrated it. And then mothers were allowed to share on social media, PR forms, what protection truly is. Yeah.
Sorry, can I ask, does this really work? And would you as a parent really rely on any app when it comes to your children?
It's a fair question. Did it work? For the brand, it definitely worked. It put a halo of technology on the brand. In terms of the functionality of it, yeah, people loved it. In fact, they wanted to turn it into a product. But the problem there was it was difficult to turn it into a product for all sorts of patent issues and everything else. So that brings up the next point, though. That's almost like you cued me into my next example. So the following year, you go, how do you beat that? Google are using that in workshops. We've demonstrated protection. What are you going to do this year for protection for the sun? And this is what the team did.
Quase. Pera lá. Maria, vem cá. Bom dia.
A gente tem um presente pra você, sabia?
Tá ficando todo bonito.
Olha aqui onde passa o protetor, ó. Como é que tá branquinho, ó.
Não vou deixar a perna dela. Não.
Tá que gostoso, filha.
So once you know what you stand for and you have that concision about protection and you're embracing true creativity, these are the type of results you can get. And think how different they are. You know, one involves a traditional print ad that you rip out, you connect to your mobile, very much a PR, social media exercise. And then this one turns on its head, it's about the dolls. They're now rolling those to your point. Not only does that work, it's great for the client because they use the product on the kids and on the dolls, so it's win-win for the clients. But they're now rolling that idea out across 8 countries around the world. And I think that's where modern marketing is going. When you have great ideas, it actually helps drive new products as well, if you're really embracing a true insight with a true technology. I thought, given I'm presenting at a university, I would show you what we do for UTech, one of the leading universities in Latin America in engineering. And they came to us and said, we want you to do a campaign. And we have this unbelievable creative director called Humberto Polar down there. And he said, I'm not going to do a traditional campaign. What we're going to do is you're going to demonstrate your innovation, and you're going to demonstrate as students that you have the most innovative students by doing unbelievable things that no one thinks is possible in engineering. And so I'm going to show you 2 examples, and I'll tell you what the third one is. And the third one is pretty hard to believe, but apparently they're pulling it off.
UTech, the University of Engineering and Technology, was about to open the application period for 2013, so they needed to call students' attention. Not just any student, but those who want to change the world, like UTech does. So we decided to start by changing our city. Lima and its surrounding villages are located in the coastal desert of Peru. In this place, there are many people suffering from the lack of potable water.
Acá en este pueblo de Pujama, todos, mayoría, sacamos agua de pozo.
no es agradable y es contaminada.
The presence of rain in this region is almost zero, but the atmospheric humidity is about 98%. Inspired by this, we worked as a team, UTEC and the agency, to build the first billboard that produces drinking water out of air. The billboard has a unique technology that captures the air humidity and turns it into drinking water.
Cada generador atrapa lo que es la humedad del ambiente. De ahí pasa un sistema de osmosis inversa. Cada tanque almacena el promedio de 20 litros. Las 5 máquinas van a hacer este proceso y se va a almacenar todo en un solo tanque.
The billboard has already produced thousands of liters of drinking water. That equals the water consumption of hundreds of families per month.
This billboard can capture moisture from the air around
I
it.
think that's probably one of the best weird planets that I've seen.
UTEC applications in 2013 increased considerably, which means that in the near future, more engineers will be working to change the world.
¿No? Que pongan en diferentes lugares, ¿no? Si es posible en cada anexo, en cada caserío, en cada pueblo, para que el agua sea generada por medio de los paneles, ¿no? Un agua que realmente nos da vida, ¿no?
So they wanted to really own innovation, and they did this. And again, same story again. How do you beat that? So I think the next one is up there, but the one they're doing, let me show this to you as well.
Los vegetales purifican el suelo y al purificar extraen esos quelatos, esos metales pesados y los traslocan a sus hojas. Entonces, ¿qué quiere decir? Que la mayoría de vegetales que consume la población de Lima están contaminados.
So when we think about putting people at the center and giving them something better, something that people really need, the latest place they've gone to is, and this is true, it sounds slightly nuts, but they've now developed a light bulb that you can plug in soil and the light lights up, which is pretty amazing. In a certain type of soil type in Latin America, that works. So that's the next project that they're working on. There's a very interesting book by a creative person called Gideon Alchemy called No, 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 Yes. And I just wanted to share it with you because I think it's a really interesting book on creativity. When he started doing creative meetings, he changed his philosophy entirely, and he said that people could only present ideas that were not possible. And then he would select the one that wasn't possible, and he said every time he tried to make it happen, he'd get 5 no's before getting a yes. And I think if you're really trying to make a difference and an impact on people's lives and use your marketing in the most effective way possible and use technology in the right way, it's a really great approach. I'm just going to show you this because this blew my mind. We actually invited Frames Still Work with Hollywood. We brought them to Cannes for the advertising festival to present with us. Because I think if you're a marketer today, you can do anything in terms of telling a story. And Framestore are a cutting-edge specialist production company. Have you seen Gravity with Sandra Bullock? Okay, I got something everyone's seen. They produced it. They produced shots the director said were impossible, and they are now used with our creative teams and our clients, our most adventurous marketers, to bring to life ideas that previously could never be brought to life. So I don't think this sounds huge. Yeah, we can put some sound in here. The reason I just wanted to show it to you is I thought you'd be interested as people who've seen the movie. Almost all of it was done in CG. And it's a whole new way of telling a story. So when you want to tell a story about your product, about an experience, about a world that maybe never existed in the past, you can dream in a way you never could before. When you want people to experience your brand in a different and a unique way, if you're creative and believe in better, you can produce that story in a better and different way that's never been done before. It's people like Framestore that have made marketing probably one of the most exciting businesses to be in right now, because we can imagine things and do things that advertising in the traditional form of advertising was never possible. And it's pretty amazing to be able to work with people like this. I mean, way more talented than the account guys like me in the ad agency. Pretty cool, right? So they would basically micro-sensor her face and drop her face into the virtual world that they created. It wasn't the cheapest exercise in history. So this goes on forever, but I think you get the point. You can have Andrew, I can give Andrew the longer film afterwards. So when we think about change, when we think about marketing today and where it's going tomorrow, I hope I've given you some examples of how focusing on better gives you a cleaner lens of how to think about bringing your brand to life. I hope when you think about better, you think about, is this really making a difference in the people who I'm talking to? Is it really making their lives better? Given that this is a presentation to a lot of MBAs, I also thought it was important to talk a little bit about what I see happening with my clients in the future. So going back to the point about not believing in gurus and hyperbole, I thought I would put it in the context of where we are today and where I think it might be going according to my clients. So this is the old 6-step model. Okay, this is if you want to see the advertising marketing world, for decades, this was the nice, easy, comfortable life that everybody had. You had business consultants, you then had some brand consultants and architecture, design, innovation agencies. You had an ad agency, you had a media agency, you had a marketing services agency, and you had a production department. Now, there was always a bit of tension between them, but there was a pretty clear way of working. I call this the current mess. So today, you have digital agencies trying to be advertising agencies. You have advertising agencies trying to be digital agencies. You have in-house production departments at the client. You have creative departments in the client, but also a bit at the agency. You have data consultants have popped up. You have social media specialists that now try and do big brand strategy. You have big brand strategists trying to do... You get the idea. And I could probably populate this with another 10, 15, 20 specialists. You have to sift through this on a yearly basis because you have to stay up to speed with it. You know, and the question is, where is it going? And people get paid a lot of money to stand up and present where they think it's going. And I actually think no one knows exactly where it's going. But I did try and have a stab at putting it into buckets for you because I think it's interesting and I'd love to know where you land on these discussions. I'm seeing 4 buckets emerge in terms of what clients need. The first is data. So most big multinationals that I talk to, there's 2 buckets, right? There's, I have so much data, I'm drowning in data. Help me sift through it. And then there's another whole group that say, I have no data, I don't know where I am. help me choose what data I need. And the truth is, if you can get, who was it, Mark Tutzel, a very famous creative guy, said to me just the other day, he said, if I could start a data agency, I'd call it Between the Lines. No one's allowed to do that now. Because data is nothing until you interpret it to get to a real insight. But if you can get to real insight, it drives your business, your marketing, and everything else. And this is actually part of business and part of marketing. The second bucket is clients who traditionally go to like an Accenture, but more of a future brand and an interbrand. They want portfolio management. I have all these brands. How do I manage them? They want to know, what's next? What's my next winning product or idea? How do I better manage my portfolio and how to help me prepare for the future? And there's more and more agencies trying to play in that space because that's what clients are asking for. Then there's what was the traditional advertising agency. And I think clients there are saying, oh my God, this is so complicated with all these different agencies, all these different media channels. Help me orchestrate. Help me be the glue. Help me manage my brand. Be the custodian of my brand with me. And come up with a large brand idea that everything can wrap itself around. Come up with that big creative leap, like the ones I was showing you. And then help me in some specialist channels as well. And then you have, again, I've called it content news and production. Today, in this day and age, especially with what's been driven through social media, but also with the fragmentation of media in general, clients need a volume of work. In the old days, it was so easy. Here's $4 million. Go produce a 60-second TV ad, and we'll play it everywhere. And agencies took 10%, took the rest of the year off. It was a rather easy life. Clients are saying to us, I need lots of high-quality content to be relevant in today's world. I need it at a low cost with a fast turnaround. And I need it to be a source of news and interest on a daily basis. So what you're seeing is standalone production companies, clients creating their own production companies, ad agencies becoming production companies. Production is turning on its head. So what our traditional, eventually what might happen is PR agencies and ad agencies may come back together with production shops here. You're seeing digital, everything's digital today. So this idea of having a specialist digital shop is becoming a little bit outdated, even as we speak. You say to a 10-year-old, they'll look at you and go, what's digital? Everything's digital, right? So I think when you think about marketing and marketing MBA and where the world is going, you have to answer these questions, which is how do you structure a brand? How do you have a truth to a brand to tie all this together? And that's more important than anyone standing on a stage and telling you this is the future and that is the future. Because those fundamentals still stay the same, standing for something. People today want to buy into brands that stand for something. It's a fundamental, whatever you do. Finding that truth. If a customer can't relate, or a client, or let's call them a person, can't relate to the truth of what you stand for today, they won't buy you. And they'll be very vocal online about why they won't buy you. Ideas, that is the currency of the ad agency, of those creative directors, those geniuses, those people that think totally differently from you and I. Sometimes it's hard to trust them because they literally live on a different planet. But they come up with those brilliant ideas, turning billboards into water and briefing students to do that and working with them is something Umberto could do, but I wouldn't know how to start. And entertainment, I think, is really the most different component that's added into the core. Because today, if you're not entertaining people, they'll just switch off. And for us, the key thing, with big multinational clients is making sure that the sum is greater than any of the parts, that everything ties together. If you speak to a CMO or a CEO of a top 10 company, they'll tell you that's the most important thing. So I just thought, I've got another 10 minutes and I've just got 2 or 3 examples and then something I want to talk about on culture. But this thing about standing for something, if you're a marketer and you work on a brand, if you work at Oxford, if you work at this particular part of Oxford, it has to stand for something. There has to be a truth that everyone who wants to come to Oxford can relate to. There has to be an idea of what this means as opposed to your competitors. And you've got to entertain people. Make billboards that make water. So I think you can put it very down into the real world immediately. This isn't just words on a chart. And here's what's interesting. Howard Gossage, again, 50, 60 years ago, said this about advertising. People don't read ads, they read what's interesting to them. So make it interesting. I wanted to show to you an example where this all comes together. We have a paint client. This was done by our team in Chicago. Paint. You can't get more unemotional than paint. And they needed to find a glue. They needed to find a reason for being. They needed a truth of why they existed, why they got up in the morning, before they talked about social media or TV or print or where it was going. And they needed to come up with something where it was a truth to the end customer. And this was the idea and the launch of an idea and a platform for them that I think plays to that.
I didn't really know there was such thing as colorblindness at the time. I thought maybe I wasn't intelligent enough to tell. I stopped painting and drawing.
I don't know what color my family's eyes are. If I could see color, I'd want to see their eyes.
Valspar worked with Enchroma, an optical lab, to bring color to everyone. Special glasses were developed to allow colorblind people to see color for the first time in their lives.
Wow. I've never been able to see this one.
I'm like getting misty. This is amazing.
This is insane. These things are amazing.
Paint company Valspar just did something pretty wonderful for a group of colorblind people.
So is that what you guys see every day? Yeah?
So it's not just about the internet, it's about technology, bringing that story of your brand to life in a beautiful way that people can appreciate. I'm showing you this. I've got an extra 5 minutes, right, because of the sound issue. I wanted to film to my mum at the end too. I'm just kidding. What was I going to say? Yeah, this is something that I wanted to share with you because it doesn't just have to be for big brands. Some of you are going to be entrepreneurs. Some of you are going to try and make a difference in the world with your own businesses. And this is something we did for a very small book company in Argentina, and we're really, really proud of it. And I just wanted to show you that you don't have to have massive budgets, and you don't have to be a big multinational to make a difference in the world with your marketing and to stand for something that people can relate to and believe in.
El libro que se planta.
Es un libro para chicos entre 8 y 12 años. Está impreso a mano con serigrafía.
Para que los niños comprendan lo del árbol, de dónde viene el papel.
So that was a nice example. Thank you. I also had some books in college I wanted to bury in the ground like that. So, but they weren't going to grow back again. So, sorry. I'm sure not here. I was at Duke. It was not nearly as good of an establishment. Before I finish on a closing thought on creativity and culture, I hope you've seen this campaign. We did this for the United Kingdom government last year here. It was a campaign that made our agency very well known in the UK that we're really, really proud of. The reason we're proud of it is it changed behavior for women in Britain. The statistics that are coming out 12 and 18 months later about how many more women are taking up exercise as a result of this campaign is phenomenal, and we're really, really proud of it. What's also interesting is we seeded this, we went online and we found word clouds and people that were women who were trying to get into exercise but couldn't get off the couch, and engaged them before we broke the campaign, months before we broke the campaign. And then when we broke the campaign on national television and in outdoor and everything else, it took on a life of its own because it had an audience that was already engaged, that already believed.
2 million fewer women are playing sport regularly. That's compared to men. Despite this, 75% of 14 to 40-year-old women say they want to be more active. So, what is putting them off?
Well, lots of things actually, all with one common theme: the fear of being judged. So how could Sport England inspire women to give judgment the finger and give exercise another go? We showed that healthy bodies aren't always ripped bodies. We celebrated cellulite, jiggled the jiggly bits and soaked the screen with sweat. Poster sites featured women in all their unphotoshopped glory. Seeded content told real stories of the personal barriers they'd overcome. And a social media algorithm found women expressing exercise anxieties so we could reply with words of support. It's fair to say the word got out.
This campaign is genius. That is so empowering.
It's called This Girl Can.
And the message is, if this girl can, anyone can.
My reaction was, finally something that empowers everyone.
And women everywhere were inspired to put their fears behind them and become girls who can.
And it's just a really fun, amazing, uplifting advert that really gets me going in the morning. I'm knackered.
So, it shows what I know. When they first showed me this ad, the original ad, which we didn't show today, but I can give to Andrew, I looked at it like, yeah, it's pretty good. And of course, I forgot the cardinal rule, which was it wasn't talking to me. And it's the only time my stepmother, and the entire time I've been working in advertising, called me up and said, I'm standing at a bus stop. I've seen the most amazing ad. Did you have anything to do with it? Well, tell me what it is. She told me. I said, no, but the agency in London that we have did it. It resonated with women that felt that way in a way that is transformative to them. And it's another lesson about add value to them, put them at the center, don't put yourself as a marketer at the center. So the whole theme of change, hopefully we've been discussing on better. But I thought I'd share with you, if you're marketers and you have to work with agencies, put up with people like me, or you want to come on the agency side, there is one basic ingredient, and that's the talent. We're in a talent business. We don't have factories, we don't have widgets. We have talented, creative, amazing people. My job is basically to recruit the best people in the industry and make sure they run to work every day. And it's the right talent and the right culture that creates a brilliant, brilliant marketing campaign, because they understand how to embrace technology, how to get insights into people, how to embrace creativity. And I just wanted to finish with something I sent out to all 8,000 employees last week. I got this email. I don't know how many, most of you have got 5 or 10 years experience in business. So I'm sure some of them were in corporations, and you get these start of the year emails. This year is an important year. We must reach our KPIs. We must deliver top double-digit growth. Well, we hired this CEO called Tabang in Johannesburg, and he wrote the most inspiring letter I've ever read. Again, if you want the whole thing, I can send it to Andrew. Talking about the state of South Africa, how he'd taken the holidays to think about how this country, this rainbow nation, at a time when it should be together, was at risk of falling apart. And he talked about the agency to employees. And he had a few, I can't give you the whole letter, but he had like 4 or 5 things he said that I thought was so magical. And it's not about profit, it's not about it's not about top-line sales, it's about people. And marketing is intrinsically a people business. And when I talk to you about change, think about better. When you choose to work with marketers and on your campaigns, choose people who believe in better. This is, for me, leadership. In the letter, he finished with a few bullet points to all his employees. Respect everyone, no matter who they are, what they look like, where they come from, what they might believe, or what station in life they might possess. Because every human being has the inalienable right to dignity. Never be afraid to ask for help or admit failure. There is never a shortage of willing people to lend you a hand in your time of need, no matter what. I'm asking you to sacrifice and commit to transformation in our business, because our collective futures determine how inclusive our society would be. Talking about change through the lens of better. Remember that you belong to a unique group of talented people, the FCB family. Treasure it because it's yours and because it will give meaning to your life. Have fun and laugh with each other as much as possible. That's how he finished his note. And I think when you think about change, when you think about the world that we know, when you think about marketing going through places it's never been to, you want to work with people like that. And so I wanted to finish on that element. So I started an hour and 5 ago. You know, I got it in this industry because I got to work with brilliant people who I could learn from every day. And I think if you have that attitude and you believe in better, you will all be very successful marketers, not just now, but over the next 20 years. And thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.